I was on the train back from Tokyo the other night. For most of the train ride, it was quiet, with the usual noise of the train and the announcements at each station. About halfway through, the doors opened and a large group of foreigners got on. They were talking over each other loudly and kind of shoving each other around on the carriage, whilst everyone else just sat there in silence. Looking around, you could see the quiet frustration on people's faces, whilst this group was clearly unaware of the disturbance that they were causing, likely because they were unfamiliar with the social etiquette. What struck me, though, was the silent reactions from the people around me. They weren't the same kind that you might have seen years ago, when situations like this were rarer and easier to ignore. And I don't think it's just that patience is wearing thin, but that the context has changed. Economic strain, record tourism, and demographic shifts are all happening at once. Everyone is talking about it, and it's creating a new kind of tension. So what might have once been an isolated incident rarely stays that way these days. Clips and stories now travel online for thousands of people to watch and, in a way, experience them too. This kind of social amplification effect means that when it does happen to you in person, it doesn't just feel like one incident. It feels like the latest entry in a long, ongoing story that's already played out from a distance. For Japanese citizens, it touches something deeply personal. It's about their home country changing faster than they can control. For foreign residents, it's wondering if years of trying to integrate still matter, or if you'll start to be seen through a different lens, defined by the worst behavior of other foreigners. But while questions of Japan's cultural future are now part of daily discussion, taking a step back, it's not hard to see why. Real wages haven't increased in years, but prices are slowly creeping up, and this whole tourism boom just feels like another weight on daily life. Especially in tourist-heavy cities where trains and streets are more crowded than ever before and hotel and restaurant prices have seen dramatic increases. Gaps in the workforce, caused by Japan's shrinking population, are increasingly filled by foreign workers. And while some see it as a necessary solution, others worry it's a sign that Japan is becoming less recognizable and in ways that may be harder to reverse. Even outside of major cities, it's impossible to miss the increased foreign presence. And this shift has happened so quickly and it's so visible that it's now become an easy focal point in political debates. And when there's a sense that something in the system isn't quite working, people are more likely to be drawn to the simplest, most emotionally satisfying answers. In the recent election, the relatively new party, Sanseito, gained significant support. Much of their campaign centered on a Japanese-first message and strong anti-immigration rhetoric, which clearly resonated with voters unsettled by the pace of change. But perhaps more importantly, their sudden rise in popularity shows just how quickly questions of identity can move from the fringes to the center of public conversation. This shift in public sentiment has been very worrying for many foreign residents. I've seen more conversations focused on possible changes, whether immigration rules will tighten further, or whether social sentiment will continue to shift in this direction, making daily life much harder. And with this rise in tourism, for those considering moving here, the question becomes whether Japan will still offer the same opportunities and sense of belonging that they may have hoped for, or whether the image that they once held no longer matches this new reality. And whether public sentiment continues to shift in favor of these parties, one thing is certain: the presence of foreigners is now a focal point, more scrutinized and more debated than ever before. So what does it mean to live in a place where you're increasingly in the spotlight, where identities are shifting, and even the smallest missteps risk being turned into part of a larger story? The economist Milton Friedman once said, "Only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. And when that crisis occurs, the actions that are taken depend on the ideas that are lying around." Essentially, when people feel that the social fabric is under threat, they look for quick and simple solutions, which is why these fear-based narratives gain traction so quickly. For foreign residents or those hoping to move here, it's the first time in recent years that their existence has been the central point in mainstream public debates. Much of the concern surrounding foreigners stems from the surge in tourism. People rarely distinguish between short-term visitors, who are more likely to be caught treating Japan as their own personal theme park or social media backdrop, and long-term residents, for whom being lumped in with that behaviour is more than frustrating. It carries real concerns like shaping public opinion in ways that can threaten their residency and everything that they've built. Like anywhere, nuance is often lost to misinformation and generalization. Yet I've seen a growing number of posts online from people asking if they should cancel their trips, study abroad programs, or plans to move to Japan, convinced by online narratives that Japan is turning against foreigners. If all you've seen are viral clips about rising xenophobia, it's easy to think that the country is turning. But perception and reality don't always match. To understand that reality means you have to look at Japan's relationship with identity, both for Japanese citizens and for foreign residents, and how it's shifting in subtle but important ways. Many Japanese are traveling overseas less these days, of course because of the increased prices, but likely also due to the renewed pride in local culture. In many cases, overseas travel is pricier, service quality is lower, and social cohesion is weaker than what one might expect back at home. Social media has also fueled this inward turn, letting Japanese people see their culture through the eyes of outsiders. It's made them more aware of what's unique about Japan and more conscious of what's at risk in a globalized world. And interestingly, much of this cultural protectionism is trickling into younger generations for the first time. For foreign residents, there is a shift too, and it's being shaped by the same pressures, but in a different way. Not an inward turn, but a question of how they're seen and whether they belong. It can be disheartening if you've spent years living here learning the language, understanding the cultural nuances, and integrating with local communities, only to then be reinterpreted and lumped into the same category as short-term visitors. It's a reminder that acceptance here can be conditional and easily undone. Just a few months of political campaigns and news cycles can undermine the nuance and reframe the online discourse. And yet, here's the reality. I can't help but sympathize with the Japanese frustrations too. While the need for increased immigration is a byproduct of deeper issues, it still has to be handled in ways that protect Japan's culture. Japan's fertility rate is extreme, but these rates are falling all over the world, and it will soon become a global issue, which is why immigration can only really be a short-term solution. Even countries that are sending migrants are seeing downtrends in fertility rates. It's like pumping water out of a leaking boat. So while carefully managed immigration can temporarily offset population decline and buy time to address immediate labor shortages, it isn't a long-term fix. Even if immigration doubled tomorrow, it would still only slow the decline, not reverse it. To actually maintain the current population through immigration alone, Japan would have to accept millions of new arrivals every decade and embrace permanent, multicultural settlement on a large scale. That would likely transform Japan in ways the public is unlikely to accept anytime soon, and they are fully within their rights to reject it. New advancements in AI could boost productivity and buy more breathing room, but eventually societies may have to ask harder questions about how to adapt and redesign their economies and infrastructure to suit smaller populations and what prosperity might mean without endless growth. Importantly though, it's not like the government is sitting by doing nothing. It's already pouring resources into childcare and family support, and while other issues that make having kids harder still need attention, cultural norms can't be rewritten overnight. Deep-rooted attitudes towards work, gender roles, and family life don't just change because a new policy appears. That's why open debate is healthier, even if the rhetoric is uncomfortable for foreigners. Suppressing it only drives tensions underground where they will just end up growing more radical. Addressing concerns early gives society a chance to adapt in response to change before pressure builds and policies are imposed in reaction to frustration or fear. And through this increased political pressure, we're already seeing tighter visa rules and more scrutiny towards foreign ownership. Without revised controls and integration efforts to support the increased numbers, it runs the risk of irreversible changes to the local culture and is more likely to cause division. And as foreigners, we can have opinions, but unless we can vote, The reality is that we either have to accept whatever changes the Japanese public choose or reconsider whether we want to live here or not. And as much as we may want to be progressive, there are psychological and social limits to how quickly people can adapt. Shared norms and common trust can take time to rebuild if a society changes too quickly. That's not an excuse for exclusion, but it's a reminder that cohesion has to be nurtured if it's going to last. But headlines, politics, and viral posts are one thing, daily life is another. And in Japan, the reality on the ground is often quieter and far more hopeful. So, is it still worth living in Japan as a foreigner? Japan has never been a particularly easy place for foreigners to live, and that's the hard truth. You stumble through language mistakes, awkward moments, and times where you wonder if you'll ever fit in. Moving here is stressful, it demands effort, and it can take years before you truly find your footing. And now when it seems like everyone is telling you that life is about to get much more difficult if you're a foreigner, that can be a bit unsettling. But here's the truth, what you see online or in the news, it isn't always the whole story and doesn't always reflect reality. Yes, Tokyo and the other big tourist cities have seen change, but at the same time, everyday life remains steady and largely untouched for most people. Of course, if you go into the busiest parts of Tokyo or Kyoto, it can feel overwhelming. Places that were once more local are now crowded with visitors. This isn't unique to Japan, it's just the reality of global tourism. And the truth is, most of the millions who visit Japan each year don't cause trouble at all, and many are tired of being surrounded by other tourists themselves, especially those that cause issues. In most districts of Tokyo, when I walk down the street, I don't feel the storm of headlines, I just feel the regular calm of daily life. Locals haven't suddenly turned against foreigners, and in most places, people are still often curious, welcoming, and interested, especially when you reciprocate that and make an effort to show interest in them. That's the paradox. The online noise is overwhelming, yet everyday life here remains steady. And that's the point. Belonging isn't defined by headlines or online narratives. It comes from what's right in front of you, the daily choices you make, the relationships you build, and the ways that you show up in the communities around you. The world isn't the same place it used to be, and the internet, paradoxically, has made us more connected but less present than ever before. The noise of globalization constantly pulls our attention outward to things that we would have never once been exposed to, and most of them are barely relevant to our own lives. In the process, they can overshadow the smaller, more meaningful things. That everyday kindness, local communities, and the relationships that are right in front of us. And that's the irony. While the online world amplifies conflict and difference, real life is grounded in smaller encounters and the way people see and respond to you in everyday moments. You can't control what someone thinks of you on first impression. That's not unique to being a foreigner in Japan, it's human nature. We all judge quickly, even if unconsciously, but those first assumptions aren't fixed. Once you talk with someone and once they see how you act, those walls usually soften. Bias is automatic, but it's also breakable. So if you come here knowing that real belonging doesn't come from headlines, policies, or online debates. It comes from the ground up. The kindness that you show to the people around you, the way that you carry yourself, and the effort that you put in to learn the language and culture. The difficulty is what makes it meaningful. If it were easy, and anyone could do it without struggle, then there would be no room for personal growth, and no sense of achievement when you finally carve out your place. That challenge isn't a wall meant to keep you out. It's an invitation to step in further. And it's important to remember, you don't need acceptance from everyone. What matters is showing, through small, intentional acts, that you can live within the system and you can find your own stability. Whether it's getting involved in your local community, greeting your neighbors, joining a festival, or volunteering at local events, even a handful of people who know and trust you can make all the difference. After all, you are the architect of your own sense of belonging. Not by demanding it, but by building it. Even through times of uncertainty where we have no control over how the world around us is changing or what it's changing into. So is living in Japan still worth it? Yes, but it depends if you come here to consume Japan or participate in it. It depends on what you expect and what you're willing to give. Japan is changing, and the world is changing, and we can't control that. But what we can control is the value of our own choices. If you're already here, live with intention. If you're thinking of coming, come with awareness, not fantasy. Because in the end, belonging doesn't begin with where you live. It begins with how you live.